started service September 15th of 44?
Yes.
And you were still in high school.
I had just started my senior year. It started on the 10th of September, and by the 20th, I was at Fort Knox.
With about 6 other guys I found.
Yeah, 5 or 6 others.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of these names, unfortunately.
Well, I can help you with that.
Okay, that'd be great.
One of them was Bob McGillier.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Bob and I were in Scouts together.
Okay.
And, of course, you know he died.
Yes.
But I don't know whether you knew anything about his background, about getting the Silver Star.
I don't know how he got it.
I do. He ended up, well, we took training at Fort Knox.
Here's your fellas.
I'll be darned.
That's
Oh.
for you to keep.
That's neat. Do you have extra copies of
Those
this?
are all for you.
Oh, great.
Those are all for you to keep
I'll add to my
your
collection.
draft cards in there and everything else. So.
Oh, well, that's super. Well, anyways, we were in training at Fort Knox. We did get, it's a long story,
That's fine.
but we took training there. I did get home at Christmas time. I don't know about Bob. I don't remember. But there's some guy from Delaware that was coming home. And he said he's got room for, now he said 3. So there was 4 of us and him, all from this part of the country. And got home at Christmas time, but after training, we headed for Fort George E. Meade, Maryland,
Okay.
for additional training before we shipped out. Well, this is leading up to something else.
That's fine.
We got in there on I think on Sunday, and we've been gone a couple days, and on a home before we went overseas. I was sitting on my bunk. McGillier was above, or maybe I was above, and I was sitting on his bunk. At that part, I don't remember. But I was reading. I got the mail. The mail was held up and then shipped to Maryland, and we passed out after we had training in the morning on Monday morning. And at noontime, when I was sitting there writing my mail, and then I had the advocate, which my folks always had sent to me. And a lieutenant came in. I didn't notice it. And he said, "Hey, soldier, where'd you get that Newark advocate?" And I jumped up, saluted, through my parents sent it to me. He said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Bob Coyne." He said, "I'll be damned." He said, "Don't you recognize me?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "I've given you enough candy in your lifetime, and you ought to remember me." And it was Paul Brooks of the Sparta.
Yeah.
Well, the Sparta was right next to the Hub clothing store. My father spent 37 years there.
Okay.
And lots of coffee over at the Sparta with other gentlemen, because that was kind of the morning hangout for businessmen downtown. And without a doubt, I was in and out different times with my dad or my mother. We would get down for something or other. And he did give us candy.
That's awesome.
So
that's a neat story.
As a result, that day, he said, "You guys are going out on some kind of a thing for something training." And he says, he picked up out of his pocket a little notepad. And he says, "I'm writing a note here." He said, "You at 4 o'clock, don't do it any sooner than that. You go to the sergeant that's in charge of you. You give him this note." And he said, "He's going to get a Jeep and bring you guys in. And when you get in, get cleaned up, put your better clothes on." He said, "You're going to go have a pass." Nobody else got a pass.
Wow.
And So he gave us a pass, and he said, where do you want to go? You want to go to Baltimore? Where was Washington D.C. or Baltimore, or I forget where it was. He had three of them. We said, well, we'd like to go in to see Washington. And he said, okay, fine. So we did what he told us, and he gave us a pass in to. He said, I cannot ever. I'm too old. They will never ship me overseas. And I've always said, if any guys come through from Newark, I'll take care of them.
That's awesome.
He was the exec officer there at our area. I don't remember what battalion or whatever thing was
Right.
For training. But anyways, we had a pass then that evening. He said, be back. Well, come the weekend, he said, now, every day we had a pass. And he said, is there anybody here that, you've been chumming around with? And we told him, yeah, there was this guy named Cassell, and I think he was from Harper's Ferry.
Okay.
But he had been a taxi cab driver in Washington. And we mentioned this to him. Is that the guy you want to go with? I'll give him a pass too, because he knows Washington.
Yeah.
So we had then a pass every day, and then it came that weekend, and he said, I'll give you three guys a pass for the whole weekend, which he did. So we went to this guy's home in Harper's Ferry.
Okay.
But the one thing that I've always remembered, I think it was the end of the first week or something, we went to his office, and he said, I want to see your wallet. Well, I thought that was kind of strange. He looked at mine, and then he took Bob's, looked at his, and he didn't ask anything about Cassell. But anyways, he said, how in the hell are you going to have a good time in Washington on $35? And he shelled out, Bob claimed it was a $50 bill. I claim it was a $100 bill.
Wow.
And he said, you guys go, because you're going to be leaving in a few days and overseas.
Right.
Have a good time.
Wow. That's awesome.
He would never took the money back. So that's one of the side stories.
That's
now,
a
that's
neat
something
story.
you may not want to do anything with. After the war, he was back at the restaurant. And then my family was always a good friend of the Bruxes.
Right.
So, but anyway, we'll go on from there.
So you were at Fort Gordon Meade.
Yeah.
And then
We shipped it from there to New York, and we got on a boat, the Queen Mary. We went over. They said it was the largest quantity of soldiers on any one boat at any one time during the Second World War.
wow.
And I thought the figure was, they told us, I thought it was around 35 or 37,000 of us.
Wow.
It was so crammed in our stateroom, I never slept in it. None of us did. There were some other guys, but the bunks, and all of your baggage was in the shower, so nobody could take a shower, and you could hardly get in to use the restroom.
Right.
And so it was in January, and most of, or all our group all slept on the decks. And you took your blanket and slept under a lifeboat.
Right. Wow. Did you get seasick or anything? Did
No,
the ride
I didn't.
bother you?
No, the only thing that I do remember, the food was lousy. The damn English were taking our good food and eating themselves, gave us lousy food. You could at night go down in I don't know what the area was called, where the stores and shops and stuff, and you could buy sandwiches and soup,
Yeah.
coffee, tea, or something like that. Bush said that's what we did. The food was terrible, but the one thing that of all that I going over, we hit a storm, a bad storm, and for even the Queen Mary was.
Wow.
Well, that was the day they were given that our area was getting the shots. The nurses and their whatever, where they were, different parts of the boat during going over. With that many, there was a lot of work.
I guess.
Well, we were in the hallway, as lined up, and they had a nurse or a lady on each side of you. She had, I think she might have been a whack. I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't know, but I don't know. And they were both giving you the shots in each arm. From then you next.
Right.
Well, I stepped up. I got the 2 shots, and the boat poured. They broke them both off.
Oh my gosh.
Each
Ouch.
ouch is right. And then fortunately they started to fall or almost fell down, and the guys around were seeing what was happening.
Right.
Or they caught her, and they didn't fall clear down. And they said, well, we know, we're sorry about that. We got to get that out. So then they had to pull it back out. And I said, you still got to give me my shot because you don't know where you did or not.
Right.
He said, you're right.
So you might have got a double dose, huh?
So I think I got a double dose. I always said I got a double dose. That was the only thing that I remember definitely about going over on the Queen.
Do you remember how long it took?
I think it was almost 4 days. It was the quickest trip they made. And we went into the 1st and 4th in Scotland and dropped anchor out in the harbor, didn't go into shore, and then they took you off. The one thing I do remember about that, there was a real pretty little boat come alongside. They dropped a ladder from the boat down onto it, and it was all spit and polished, and the guy climbed up to get on I imagine he was going to be the pilot or something anyway.
Right.
Well, as he was going up the ladder, unfortunately for him, some GIs opened the bilge and out went the garbage.
Oh my gosh.
Right on top of this little boat. Oh man. The ones on the boat were shaking their fist, and he was holding on to the ladder, and it was a mess.
I'll bet.
So I'm sure somebody got their chewed, you know what.
Right. So you're at
And
Scotland.
I happened to be on the side we saw all this.
You didn't laugh, did you?
No. The guys were whooping it up.
I'll bet. So then did you go down into England?
We get off there and we were taken into shore on a small boat. It seemed like for hours.
I'll bet.
They were unloading and unloading. And there was a whole lot of train rails that come in. And I think there was at least 4 trains lined up, maybe more, that I couldn't see.
Sure.
And you were assigned, you were given a number. You were on so-and-so, or you were on so-and-so. But most of us were all grouped together. And we went into shore and had to go walk, not a great distance, probably far from here to the bottom of the hill, and then got on a train. And it wasn't too long, and the train was all filled, and then headed for Southampton.
Okay.
And it seemed like we wound around all over England. One thing I do remember was going into some city, I don't know what the city was, and there was a circus or carnival or something, Ferris wheels, merry-go-round and things, and the train stopped for just a little bit. I probably did wait until another train went by or something, and some civilian ladies got on with baskets, and they had apples and some of them, the guys opened the window, or would open the windows, and somebody would go along and pour coffee or something, or
Right.
tea in their canteen. And that I remember playing.
Yeah.
But we were quite a few hours going and stopping. Seemed like the trains did stop more than they ran. But then we went to Southampton and we got on we were there one night and got on a Greek boat to cross to Le Havre.
Okay.
We did have dinner, and it was the best dinner that we'd had for a long time. But the Greeks had this dinner for us. Probably American GI doing it, I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, they had a very good meal. Went to Le Havre. You had to walk up a big hill, and I thought the duffel bag was gained 20 or 30 pounds. You went into a barracks, but they said, don't bother doing anything. Just lay on top of the springs or what. And there'll be a truck here to pick you up within an hour. And there was one of the Red Ball Express that
Yeah.
they had, and I remember getting in the truck, and I was small enough I could crawl under the seats, dropped down, and so I'd crawl under that and put the helmet over my face so I wouldn't get kicked, and I could sleep. The rest of them had to sit up and do it. But so I didn't see much until we went clear up across Belgium. I'm trying to think, I lost the names of the big cities. And we were headed for Aachen.
Okay.
Now this was right after the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay.
And I can't remember the names. Some of the prominent names of cities we went through, but most of them I just say, okay.
Right.
So I didn't see much. I remember when we got to Aachen, now that slipped my mind. The name of the camp had been a factory. I'm embarrassed, I can't think.
Oh, that's
Anyways, well, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And we were there, I think, 3 days. I do remember we were close enough to where the battle was, we could hear the artillery going off.
Okay.
Stolberg.
Okay.
We were at Stolberg.
Yeah.
And I remember McEwier and some of the guys sneaked out of camp and they got some beer someplace. And I wouldn't do that. I remember the one thing that was kind of embarrassing, but they didn't have a latrine. They had a thing that ran down with water in it. And you had to do your business and urinate or anything else. And then they had a bucket or something with dried toilet paper in it. And you that, and it went down.
And now, who were you serving with then?
Well, I knew I was going to go to 759th Light Tank Battalion.
Okay.
And that's where they were taking, the truck was taking us. I don't remember how many there was of us, but it seemed to me at least half a dozen of us.
Okay.
A couple guys were lucky enough to ride in the truck. Two of us had to we rode in the back where they had some ammunition that they were taking. And so I was one of the guys that I don't care, I can ride back there and put a tarp over us.
Right.
And that's how we rode to our outfit. And we got there, and it was, by the time we got there, it was dark.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing much. I do know that we got out of the truck and had a duffel bag, and said, just take your duffel bag in this house or something. You're all going to be on guard duty right now. We've been so short of help, and we've all were. So actually, we got out of the truck, put our luggage bag, a duffel bag with stuff in a someplace, and then I was supposed to be on guard duty for 4 hours. I was on guard duty all night long until the next morning, and until they finally relieved me. And then finally, the guy said, "How long you been here?" I told him. And he said some words. He said, "They were supposed to relieve you." And he said, "You probably haven't anything to eat." I said, "Nope." He said, "Well, come on." So he takes me to where we get some meat. I do remember meeting the captain, and I always have thought that the captain, he said, "How old are you?" And I told him, "You lied to me." He said, "You're 16 if you're anything. Maybe you're younger than 16. And no, sir, I'm 18. This day turned 18, shows it on my record. He said, "Yeah, but you could have lied." I think he always felt that I had lied, so he wouldn't put me. Well, first of all, they had lost the M4 light tank, and there was. Now I may be wrong on these figures because I forget.
Sure.
But I was thinking that there was 68 of them made at Lima, Ohio. By the time the end of the war, and when I got with them, they were down to hardly any. And we ended up losing 92. So how do you lose more than were ever made?
Right.
Well, there was a part of part of the 4th Cavalry Group maintenance that would go out and if the tank was able to be rebuilt or
Sure.
redone, reserviced, or and they'd bring them back and work on them. So they lost them more than one time.
Right.
So I bet I wasn't with them hardly a couple of weeks, and we didn't have any tanks, any of the light tanks. Yeah. It was the only light tank battalion in the Second World War was the 759. And the 759th was attached to with the 4th Cavalry Group.
Okay.
And the 4th Cavalry Group was made of the 759th, the 4th Cavalry, the 24th Cavalry, and I forget the number of the anti-tank battalion, or and an artillery platoon or company.
Okay.
And that was part of the 4th Cavalry Group. Then they were attached to the 7th Corps. So we were part of the 7th Corps. Okay. All the way through. The 7th Corps was one of the main corps during the whole war. They did a lot of reconnaissance because most of them you lost your tanks, and especially during now I wasn't with them at this time, but in from Le Havre, from Battle of the Ball, my members were leaving me. Where all the soldiers went, American soldiers went into the beach.
Yeah. Oh, D-Day? Normandy?
Normandy.
Okay.
I couldn't think of Normandy. From Normandy, they were assigned several of the major places, the cities where they had a bridge across, There was a bridge that was extremely difficult. We lost a good bit of it. I think there was over all the records I've got lost for that stuff.
Sure.
But that peninsula was the 7th Corps was their job to take her to the end. And we did, or they did.
Right.
But they lost a lot. I had an older brother that was in the Navy, and on D-Day, he drove LCIs into shore. I don't know whether it was more than one trip or not. I don't remember him ever talking about it. But he was in England for several months prior to D-Day. I think it was almost 6 months that he spent in England before D-Day. And then he came home on Queen Elizabeth with Winston Churchill. When he came over to have the meeting with Roosevelt,
Right.
well, he came home on that boat. And I said it was supposed to be a secret because we all knew it. He still had his everything except his gun. Yeah, even though he was in the Navy, I didn't know if they gave him guns.
Right.
Well, then he was home a month, and then he was shipped out to the South Pacific, shipped to California. Well, he drove to California with, there was him and another guy from Newark in the Navy that were going to someplace in California for training. You had to go on your own, but you would be reimbursed. And he found out that there was 2 girls that they knew in high school that were going to California. So they got the job of driving their car, or maybe it was more than one car. I don't know. I think it was 3 or 4 of these girls.
Yeah.
Anyways, they had a ball.
I'll bet.
But, you know, they drove the cars to California and then shared gasoline expense.
Yeah.
But they were allowed to, then the government would, from your distance, would pay accordingly,
Right.
which they did. He was there for, I don't know, let's say a month, and then was shipped to South Pacific, and he was in the invasion of 7 islands as a coxswain during the South Pacific battles.
Right.
I don't know the story of how he ended up in China, but he did end up with a group that was in China. And they had asked for volunteers to take rice to the interior of China in LCIs.
Okay.
And he had volunteered. He said he thought he made a mistake when the day before, they loaded the boat, and the next day he assigned 4 Marines to each corner of the LCI and put a machine gun on the corners.
Wow.
Well, he thought maybe I made a mistake. Well, going up the Yangtze River, they stopped. There was one officer with them. They stopped at an island, and the officer said, from this point on, if you're fired upon, you're on your own, just get the heck out. They said, yeah, don't try to go up the river further, just turn around. Also, well, the guys were concerned about unloading the rice, bags of rice. They did have lots of rice. And they said, well, there'll be these goops, they called them.
Right.
We'll come down and unload them. You don't have to worry about that. And as soon as we get unloaded, there will be some stuff put on the boat to carry back. So he says, what is this stuff? Well, I don't know. Anyways, he got there and Jim said that there's no more, and pulled him to a dock. It's where they told that they'd go as far up the Yangtze to where there's a bridge been bombed, and it's blocking the river, and we can't go any further. But there is a dock there. So that's, he said they pulled him to the dock, and it seemed like there was hardly any time at all. Down came all of these people carrying stuff. And there's a lot of women. He said some of the things, the guys would take 3 or 4 of them to carry it. And they couldn't figure this out. And it was all wrapped. Everything was wrapped and covered up.
Right.
And so the women all were dressed very nicely. And I think they had 2 or 3 or 4 women plus several men assigned to each one. They didn't know what was in all, but it was all shapes and stuff, and all kinds of boxes and things.
Yeah.
Well, one of the guys not on his boat, or coxswain, got to talking to a Chinese guy that could speak English. That was, all of that stuff is the gold, silver, artifacts from Chiang Kai-shek taken to Taiwan.
Wow.
So that's one of the reasons today the Chinese are still one of the reasons they're wanting the island back.
Yeah. Wow.
But
That's interesting.
That's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But Jim said that when they got back to the big town where they started from, there were photographers did take pictures after the boats were unloaded. They sold sailors and Marines that took rice to the interior, and there was an article in the naval publication. No mention of what they brought back or took up other than the rice.
Yeah. Well, so you're back in Europe while all this is happening, and since you don't have any light tanks, I assume you're walking?
No.
Okay.
We had half tracks and other things. And they started getting I called it the small Sherman tank.
Okay.
And then 759th was the first tank outfit in the European theater. They got the new, I call it a Studebaker tank. It was really a nice tank. It had a 75 millimeter gun on it. And it was I did drive it one time. When they first got it, by the time we got them, the war was just about over.
So your job was a tank driver?
I know, my training was a tank gunner.
Okay.
And, usually the gunners were the small guys because you had to get in where you were.
Right.
And it wasn't very big for a big guy. McKillier was what they call bogey driver. He was an assistant driver, and he had machine guns that he took care of. Now, about a week before the end of the war, we went through the Harz Mountains, and then after the war, and when you really get together, we mapped all them. We were both in the same area numerous times.
Right.
One didn't know it, of course.
Oh, of course.
And he was in a medium tank outfit. We were a tank attached to the 759th and the 4th Cavalry was attached to more outfits or different outfits. The 7th Corps was, I should say, attached to more armies than any other outfit during the Second World War. Once we were attached to one outfit 3 times in one day, including the English. And of course, I got into communications by volunteering. I kept volunteering because I didn't have the tanks. So I said, well, I could. I served one night as guard duty, as I told you about, and one a day in
Mess hall.
Mess. And the mess sergeant wanted me. He said, anytime you want to work, you're a good worker. Because I like working with you. So, but I only served that one day. I did volunteer a lot for communications and ended up most of the time in what's called liaison. Had an own Jeep, and had a driver, and we would go to Corps headquarters or Army headquarters or battalion headquarters and get map and get communications, and we were the contact between our officers. So I was always with the officers. From the time I got into communications or liaison, we were with the officers all the time. One thing, or several things that I want. One of the things that I wanted to bring out is we liberated, and it bothers me. You don't read much about it, and you never hear about it. Numerous work camps. And I had a book, or someplace, that states that there's probably over 20,000 work camps. And a work camp could be a two-car garage, a single-car garage, or a two-car garage, a little building. And usually the workers there were prisoners from Poland or Romania or Czechoslovakia or someplace that the Nazis had moved into.
Yeah.
And taken a lot of the people, and we knew about some of them as we moved into a community. We always tried to liberate, as we called it. Some of them had the everybody was been shot. They killed a lot of them. The Germans killed them when they pulled out. That's what I started to tell you.
Yeah.
And by the time we got there, maybe the day before, the Germans had left. So we did liberate between the 4th and the 24th, numerous. I know I was personally involved with seeing some of them right after we moved in.
Right.
Because that was what we'd see work camp. And we knew that the people there had been shot or killed. Maybe they were still lay on top of the ground or in the building or whatever. I do have one work camp that I've got the history or the whole story, and now this is something I don't normally give out or show. The one work camp, maybe I'll go down and get that picture too. There was a young boy. We just moved in to Coyne, Hoym, I think it was. And this young boy went to the guards that we'd set up, and he'd come out of hiding, and he said that he's broke away, somehow got out and away from the work camp.
Right.
And what they did, the Germans took him out to a place where they put hay, but it was open except a roof on it. And then for straw, hay or straw for the animals. And they made them dig a hole, and then there was 7. And I think it was 7 or 9. 7. They shot, but he somehow got away. So he went to saw our officers, told them what he knew, what happened, and what he saw, and he would take them out, which is just out. It was a little village. The farm villages in Germany, a lot of them were the farmers had a farm would be out here, but they clustered their houses together, and there would be maybe half a dozen or maybe 24 little villages. Lots of those. Well, that's where these work camps were usually, all these little villages. And that's how he managed to get away. Well, Eisenhower had seen, I think, with Auschwitz. And he put the word out that if any time you come across a situation like this, have the people dig them up and then have the whole village go through and view them. A buddy of mine got a camera. And then when we was able to get pictures taken, they came dressed in their white shirt and suit on, and carrying a shovel. We told them, and this was what Eisenhower said should be done, which was done numerous times by different outfits that came across numerous concentration camps or work camps. Anyways, the one I'm speaking about first at Coyne, the boy took the officers out, and then the next day we put out. Usually, you look for a burgomaster or somebody who is in charge of the village or the town, and what was going to happen the next day. People a certain hour till like 11 o'clock or something, or maybe earlier or whatever, going to have to show up, and everybody'd come, and our troops were going to go through your houses to make sure that everybody can. If they're sick in bed, take them out. And we did. And so that would happen more than one time.
Sure.
He got so he didn't want it anymore. These little work camps, most generally, they were killed. I'll never forget the last one, and I don't remember the name of it. But there was a man, I would say he's middle-aged, could speak very good English. He was they came from Budapest.
Okay.
But I think, I'm not sure, I was thinking he could speak, I don't know what language, but he could speak English very well. He had been the chef of the largest hotel in Budapest. Well, we latched onto him right now. The officers did. And he had 4 Polish girls, 4 or 5, I don't remember, that were working for him in the kitchen. Fortunately, the Germans in that particular camp, he had been put more or less in charge, so that he didn't have any of the German soldiers. A lot of them weren't German, some of them were Russian or other things with guns and doing what the Germans told him. Okay. He may have had some foreign soldiers rather than I won't call them soldiers, guys with guns.
Okay.
Anyways, that particular camp. Okay, so it was against Army rules and regulations to have civilians in a vehicle. Well, we started going from then on, every place, we'd be here overnight. Next morning, there's girls where they're fixing breakfast. So they either rode inside tanks or they rode inside on trucks or somehow. But anyway, some of them were still there when I came home in July. But anyways, you got so but this guy that was the chef, he was marvelous. And they got in the word got out about his food and stuff. And then we had especially officers would come from other camps. We were headed towards Leipzig. And like Leipzig was up here, and I don't remember where we were, let's say here, and Nordhausen and Oschersleben, we were over here.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, I don't remember where we stayed the night before, but we were convoyed. And by the way, we were one of the outfits that had driven more miles in one day across Germany.
Okay.
Ours, I think someplace in record was either 89 or 99 or something like that miles advance, which is a huge advancement for a whole army or group in one day. But anyway, the advance patrol came back to catch up. They communicated and said they were returning, and we stopped and we're all along the highway. And the patrol stopped and talked to the officers and told them about this camp. And they said there was the main gate was open, and there was some of the guys or people in the camp that were outside. You don't know what their condition is or how they're going to act or anything. And but they said that the German soldiers had left. Well, they were talking to Corps headquarters in the Army, and it turned out that don't head for there. We got to get there as soon as you can. That is extremely important. And they said double time all the way. Get there as fast as you can get. But you're going to be the first ones there. Well, it turns out, I would say it was probably 30, 25, 28, 30, maybe 35 miles from where we were over to Oschersleben. That all. And we got there, and the officers put the word back on the line. You know, what we were getting into is that in the morning we'll stay overnight, but in the morning we got to get going to Leipzig. That's where Corps and that was. But we were told we were going to be in the Russian zone, and we don't know what the situation is.
Right.
But in the morning we'll try to get out of the Russian zone and head for where headquarters is going to be. Anyways, we got into this town, and as I mentioned with the officer, it turned out they went right to I would call it the business district of the downtown, and like most communities, maybe it was a grocery store. The people live upstairs, or it's a jewelry store, the guys live upstairs, or it's a hardware store, people live upstairs, or you know.
Right.
Anyways, I think the house. This is my supposition. The guys were in the insurance business, or they didn't call it insurance. They had another name for it, but basically that was something to do with the community. And I'll tell you something that's kind of funny. You know, usually, get in the guys will start looting or looking.
Sure.
And they always look for a wall safe or a safe. If they find one, you know, what do? You blow it with a hand grenade. But And then when we were in, I don't know how I came up. I remember going up the steps into a room that I was going to sleep in, and some of the guys came out of the adjoining room and said, they're going to blow the safe. How do you mean they're blowing the safe? I said, well, they took the pictures off the wall. I don't know if it was a lieutenant that did it or a sergeant or a black sergeant.
Right.
But behind the picture frame was a wall safe. And so next thing I know, they tied the wire to the hand grenade, pulled the pin and blew it. But what's funny, what was in it was a little paper bag with a few coins and an old pair of silk hose that had more holes than
real valuable stuff.
So you can have one of these. So I still got someplace one of the coins that was in the safe, but nobody wanted the silk hose. But anyways, we went on to the camp. We talked about it, and I said, we're in the morning. The officer said there'll be no hot chow. We'll have coffee. We did, and I said in the morning we'll have hot coffee and tea or whatever. They never have tea. I always took the tea, and so I always had hot tea. I could make it. Anyways, I said in the morning we got to get headed on towards Oshersleben from Bad Hall, which was another probably 8 or 10 miles, not very far. And some of us said, well, we want to go down and see this camp. Well, I didn't know until later that there's actually 2 camps. The one that we saw and was in, or the pictures in, was Mittadora. And I don't know what the other one, which is just across the road, but they're all one.
Right. And
the one that was going to be the important one, and I claim it's probably the most important concentration camp that was taken during the Second World War. It was where the V-1 rockets, the V-2 rockets, and the jets, all the stuff on the jets. Our government knew about this. We didn't know about it. And they was in the Russian zone. They figured we had 12 hours to get it looted, take everything out. We heard later, because Ted and I, we went down. There was a couple of our tanks and the trucks, and I don't know. Ted just drove our Jeep. Let's say the camp was like this.
Okay. And
there was over in the corner was a gate, and it was brick, a nice arch, gate. Well, that was open, so he drove his Jeep right in, or our Jeep, and stopped. And we got out and towards the other guys come along the fence, the wall here, and parked their vehicles. Came around, they came in the same way. So. This, I don't know, I wasn't one of the very, very first ones in there.
Okay.
I don't know. Probably I was in the first 10. And this is, okay, we weren't there hardly any time at all. In came a lot of vehicles. And there were officers and from other outfits. We didn't know who they were. How did they? What? We don't know what's going on here. Well, it was no time at all. The car that came in, or it was an Army vehicle parked right behind it. It was the live photographer.
Okay.
He gets out and he comes up and he looks around and he says, "Hey guys, can I put my tripod on your hood. We don't give a damn. It belongs to the United States government. Anyways, as well, I need the elevation. Now I can put the tripod on the hood and then operate the camera from the two seats. He straddled, which is what he did. Well, that puts us in a bad situation. All these other vehicles are coming in and parking someplace around this entranceway, and we're blocked in. Our guys are going on.
Oh.
And we're supposed to be with them.
Okay.
So anyways, we weren't with them. We were here until about 10 o'clock, trying to get officers and other people to get out so we could, pretty hard to tell a colonel or a general, move your damn vehicle. You want to move, you got to go. Yeah. So anyways, that's the reason Ted and I, this is Ted,
okay.
That's me.
And in that photo he was on top of your Jeep?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, something. See this guy right here? And he's got a stick or a pole.
Yeah.
There were two guys dressed a little bit like these guys. And when we first got there, and he was coming down these roads with carrying people and dumping them, then going back and getting more. These were all workers, but they were probably starved to death, but something else. Camp Mitadora was bombed accidentally.
Okay.
You can see the remains and stuff over here. The bodies were being brought out by probably different ones, but the two guys, and I didn't notice, I saw them doing this, and I didn't pay any attention to it. It was just, well, I don't know when they stopped him, and he just dumped the person there. But that's how they were getting a lot of the people out of and they'd filled up these. Okay, the photographer, and I'll get a copy of it and show you so you can take a picture of the life book. The best of photographers that they had and used for quite a few, for many years. Well, each one was supposed to pick pictures that he was particularly proud of, and he chose this one. And so that's how I know this picture is also in the life book, Best of Life. It's also in Holocaust Museum in Washington, and I do know that it's also in Tel Aviv and in the museum there. How do I know that? I've talked a couple times with the governors have wanted me to come over and talk on a particular day. They call it the Holocaust Day, and I have. And the last time I talked, which was 2 years ago now, I didn't talk this year. But anyways, the Jewish rabbi that was somewhat involved with the governors on Holocaust Day, and he talked to me. He kind of took me under his wing and that day because I was going to be one of the presenters. I was, and the other man was. And he's the one that told me when he saw this picture. Well, he said, I got something I want to show you. And he was gone for a few minutes and got out of a suitcase or a briefcase or something. It's the picture minus the American soldiers. And it was a picture of this is fairly recently now, when what's the group, in Tel Aviv, and the two parties and the two countries that are
The Palestinians.
kind of against each other.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, they had taken this picture, taken the American soldiers out, and trying to say if the Jewish did this. The 4th Cavalry Group, the colonel, they were majors first, but then became colonels there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
The head officer of the 4th Cavalry, the 24th Cavalry, were West Point colonels.
Okay.
And buddies. And characters. Huge characters. Because I was with them all the time.
Yeah.
I was bringing them the booze they drank. Anyways, the one colonel got a boxer dog. He thought the guys needed a mascot. Well, the other colonel said, well, we got to have a mascot. Whoever brings one in, I'll see gets a pass to Brussels, London, or Paris. That sounded great.
I bet.
And so the guys, of course, keep in mind at that time, most of the dogs were becoming scarce because the German people were eating them. You know, food was there at the end of the war. I don't know where they got the food to eat. Eat the grass and eat the dandelions and stuff.
Wow.
But anyways, guys brought things in, and that was over a couple-week period. Well, fortunately, Ted and I had been having our own Jeep. We'd go into a community. We'd ask if Du Hobbins, I forget the word name for kennel, home house or whatever. Anyways, and we found in Bad Hall, there was a guy that had, an older man that had a kennel.
Okay.
And yes, he did have some puppies. That people knew that. You just inquire and find out.
Right.
So we found him, and he had, I don't remember the other kind, but he had these baby Skye Terriers. I wasn't familiar with a Skye Terrier. I just knew that they were cute. This picture is not very good. That's one of the early pictures of his face. But anyways, one of the things that we were fascinated by was the fact that he was blue. His color in his coat was blue, just about like your shirt. Well, you know, I never saw a blue dog before. And he came over, and the kennel, he came over and sat down and looked at us. Well, of course, they had the others running around. And right away, we took a fancy to that puppy.
Sure.
Real cute little thing, all fuzz, hair all down over his face. And but the guy didn't want to sell it. No. At that time, you bought and sold with cigarettes. Everything you wanted, you took for cigarettes. And we kept putting some cigarettes down, and he said, well, it's too young. You don't want to take away from his mother. And you guys can't, you know. Well, we assured him there's a couple hundred guys that would look after this puppy. Well, time we got, I don't remember exactly how many. but I think it was equal to 2 carton individual cigarettes.
Yeah.
How many cigarettes are in a pack? 20?
I think it used to be 20.
So, 20. I was thinking there was 300 cigarettes.
Okay.
Well, he took it. But he said he could speak a little English. I don't know how old he was, but I'm guessing at least 70 or 80. And he definitely did not want to sell. But we were trying to convince him it would have a lot of good care.
Right. But didn't you have to? I thought the newspaper article said then that you bought him from somebody so that you could ship him home.
That was wrong.
Okay.
I brought him home.
Okay.
I was going to leave him when the war ended. We were in the Russian zone. Now, we had gone into the Russian zone where the concentration camp was, and then went to Leipzig, and we went north towards what was going to be the river. I can't think of the name of it. That's where we were when everything came, when the Russians and the Americans first met. Actually, I contend that our outfit, our guys, were the very first ones to meet up with the Russians. However, we were in the Russian zone. Now, some of the guys got there early. I did not. Far from this little village to the river, I don't know. It may have been 6 miles, maybe 3. It wasn't very far. And there was no bridge there. But there was I did get later to it. There was what I call pontoon with ropes. And the farmers took their tractor or their cattle, or they went by pulling this across the post on both ends with a rope and pulleys, and they pulled this thing. And the river wasn't very big right there. It wasn't very wide.
Yeah.
Actually, on up river is where they news media and all of them claim that the Russians and the Americans first met up at Tagaw.
Okay.
There's a castle there. Tagaw was not ever bombed or anything. It's a nice country town with a castle and a good place to say the Americans and the Russians met. As far as I'm concerned, that was a bunch of baloney.
Right.
It was where we were at this little crossing.
Wow.
Where some of the Russians came down, and we. But there again, a lot of stuff in books give credit to an army. It wasn't the damn army that was doing the thing. It was the battalions and companies and foot soldiers. But they'll say it might have been part of the 4th Cavalry group, or it could have been 24th or someplace else. But the book, there's several books talking about going into the concentration camp and being first ones there. Well, they may have been a couple of days later.
So when did you get out of the service?
July 46.
6. And then when you came back, did you go back to school?
Yes.
High school? Okay.
I went back. I knew. I'm gonna put this down a second.
Okay.
I just felt I needed to get back in with it, and so I ended up going back I was going to go for a whole year, But after 6 months, Mr. Boyd thought, well, you might as well go ahead and go on to Ohio State, which is what I did. And some of my buddies were going to Ohio State. Bob McKillier, but he ended up down at Athens, and I went down, and I decided I didn't want to go to school down there.
Yeah.
I had grandparents that lived in Columbus, and they rented the rooms out to boys going to Ohio State. Well, at that time they were on 9th Avenue. Well, they decided to buy a house down off close to 5th Avenue, which was a hell of a lot longer to walk. And anyways, I went over and I was there a year and a half. I was very, very disappointed, and I was going to take counting, but I didn't have any teachers that taught knew English. Every teacher I had was a foreign student that could not speak English. Now, I had the third largest group of students the year that I started in. That had more soldiers, ex-soldiers,
Right.
on the GI Bill. It was the largest group they ever had. And I forget how many students there were. It was a lot.
So how did Newark High figure what year you graduated?
Well,
I mean, did they say you graduated with your class, or?
Well, I went ahead and, as I said, and I had a ball. I enjoyed it. The teachers called you Mr. Coyne. I'll never forget. Well, that's another story. Something that happened. I decided to go on, and I went under Ohio State, and as I said, even you had to take so much athletics. Well, the guys in my grandmother's house talked me into taking, boxing and something else. You won't be doing anything. You're going to be exercising. They didn't know what they're talking about. They already signed up for it. The first class was outside the stadium, or the football stadium, and they had tires. They were set like tires, a group of tires here, 3 tires, 4 tires, and you went over, and the guy put gloves on you. And you go out, you're supposed to put your foot in one tire and the other tire, and then the guy, and then start hitting. Now, I put my right foot down, put my left foot down, and there was a guy in front of me, I think he was 10 foot tall and weighed 500 pounds, and he hit me once. And I flew clear across out, almost knocked out. I got up, went to that man, I said, take him off. And I signed up for tennis, and it was tennis and golf.
Less contact sport.
So that did me in on athletics.
Wow.
But anyways, as I mentioned in something or other, even today, if I smell something dead, like a rat or anything,
Right.
it sets memories off. But I can't stand the death odor, because it was, most of the people that was in those pictures probably ended up vomiting someplace. Yeah. So.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk to me.